The thunderous hooves of an approaching horse broke the evening stillness as Dahlia Kincaid pressed her back against the rough bark of a cottonwood tree. The year was 1876, and the Montana Territory had no mercy for a woman alone. She'd been on the run for 3 days now, her dress torn at the hem, her dark auburn hair falling loose from its pins. The riders who'd burned her father's homestead wouldn't be far behind. "Whoa there, Tempest," a deep voice commanded as the horse slowed to a trot. Dahlia held her breath, clutching the small pistol her father had given her on her 20th birthday. She'd never fired it at a person, but desperation made courage of fear. The rider dismounted with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. Tall and broad-shouldered, his face shadowed beneath a dust-covered Stetson, he led his horse to the creek, seemingly unaware of her presence. "I know you're there," he said without turning, his voice calm as still water. "Behind the cottonwood, I mean you no harm, miss." Dahlia stepped out, her pistol aimed squarely at his back. "That's what they all say before they prove otherwise." He turned slowly, hands raised to shoulder height. His face caught the last of the day's light, strong-jawed, with eyes the color of a winter sky. A thin scar traced a path from his right temple to his cheekbone. "Vaughn Daniels," he offered, "I've got food and coffee if you're hungry." "How do I know you're not one of them?" Her voice wavered despite her efforts to sound stern. "The Blackwell gang," he shook his head. "I'm riding in the opposite direction. Besides, those men don't usually introduce themselves before they do their killing." Dahlia lowered her gun slightly. "How did you know I was running from them? Only things causing folks to run these days around these parts are Blackwell's men or starvation." He gestured to her torn dress and the small bundle at her feet. "And you don't look starved." "They burned everything," she said, the words catching in her throat. "My father's land. They killed him when he wouldn't sell." Vaughn nodded, as if this was a story he'd heard too many times before. "I'm sorry for your loss, miss. What's your name?" "Dahlia Kincaid." She finally lowered the pistol completely, too exhausted to maintain her guard. "Well, Miss Kincaid, my camp's just over the ridge. You're welcome to share my fire and supplies for the night. Tomorrow I can take you to Willow Creek. There's a sheriff there who's still honest." "They said you'd break me," she whispered, more to herself than to him, remembering the warnings of the town gossips when her father had brought her west from Boston 2 years prior. Life out here broke delicate Eastern women, they'd said. She was proving them right, falling apart at the first true hardship. The cowboy's eyes softened as he moved closer, slow and unthreatening as one might approach a spooked horse. "I'll only bend closer to love you," he answered, the words so unexpected that Dahlia nearly dropped her pistol. "What did you say?" she asked, certain she'd misheard. A flush crept up his tanned neck. "I meant I'll only help you." "It's what my mother used to say, that bending with life's hardships made you stronger than breaking against them." Dahlia studied him, searching for deceit and finding none. "I'd be grateful for your fire tonight, Mr. Daniels." "Vaughn," he corrected, reaching for her small bundle. "Just Vaughn." That night, huddled by the crackling fire, Dahlia watched the cowboy across the flames. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he prepared a simple meal of beans and salt pork, the aroma making her stomach growl embarrassingly loud. "When's the last time you ate, Miss Kincaid?" he asked, passing her a tin plate. "Yesterday morning, and please call me Dahlia." She took the plate gratefully, trying to remember her manners despite her hunger. "Dahlia," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. Like the flour, she nodded, taking a bite of the hot food. "My mother's favorite. She died bringing me into this world." "My condolences," he said quietly. "It was long ago." She took another bite, savoring the simple meal. "What brings you to this part of the territory, Vaughn?" He hesitated, pouring coffee into a tin cup. "I'm looking for someone." "Family? No." His eyes darkened. "A man who needs to answer for what he's done." The way he said it told Dahlia all she needed to know. This was not a social visit or a happy reunion he sought. Is it something to do with Blackwell?" she ventured. Vaughn's jaw tightened. "In a manner of speaking. I used to ride with a Texas Ranger unit. We were tracking Blackwell's operations from Texas up through the territories. My partner and I got too close." He absently touched the scar on his face. My partner didn't make it. I've been following the trail ever since. You're going after them alone. Dahlia couldn't hide her shock, not to fight them, to find evidence. Names, dates, places, enough to bring to federal marshals. He sipped his coffee. What about you? Any family left? Dahlia shook her head. Just my father and now. She set down her empty plate, fighting back tears. The land was supposed to be ours. We had the deed, but Blackwell's men said it belonged to the railroad now. The railroad doesn't own anything in this valley, Vaughn said. Not legally, at least. Blackwell's been running that scam for years, claiming to represent the railroad, forcing people off their land, then selling it to the highest bidder once he's run everyone out. My father died for nothing then, Dahlia whispered. Not nothing, Vaughn replied firmly. He died standing for what was right. That's never nothing. Dahlia looked up to find his eyes on her, steady and sure. Something warm flickered in her chest, not quite hope, but perhaps its distant cousin. Get some rest, he said gently. We've got a long ride to Willow Creek tomorrow. Dahlia nodded, pulling the offered blanket around her shoulders. Thank you, Vaughn. No need for thanks. Out here we look after our own. He leaned back against his saddle, hat tipped low over his eyes. And something tells me you're made of stronger stuff than you know, Dahlia Kincaid. She watched him through the dying firelight, wondering how a stranger could have such faith in her when she had so little in herself. Morning came with a golden light that painted the prairie in hues of amber and bronze. Dahlia woke to find Vaughn already up, tending to the horses. He'd brought his sturdy bay stallion, Tempest, and a dappled mare he introduced as Willow. She's gentle, he said, helping Dahlia mount. She'll bear you safely to town. She's beautiful, Dahlia said, stroking the mare's neck. Is she yours? A shadow crossed Vaughn's face. She belonged to my partner. I couldn't leave her behind. They rode side by side across the rolling landscape, the day warming as the sun climbed higher. Vaughn taught her how to read the land where water might be found, which plants were edible, how to spot signs of human passage. You're a quick study, he remarked when she correctly identified tracks left by a small hunting party of Crow Indians. My father wanted a son, she admitted. He taught me everything he would have taught a boy: tracking, shooting, even how to mend fences. My aunt in Boston was scandalized. Vaughn chuckled, a deep, pleasant sound that made her smile. I reckon those skills are serving you better than embroidery would right now. True enough, she agreed, though I can embroider quite beautifully when the occasion calls for it. He glanced at her, a half-smile playing at his lips. A woman of many talents. By midday, they'd covered significant ground. They stopped to rest the horses by a small stream, sharing jerky and hardtack in companionable silence. Tell me about Willow Creek, Dahlia said, breaking the quiet. Is it a place I could start over? Vaughn considered this. It's small but growing. Good people, mostly. Sheriff Holt's a fair man who doesn't take kindly to Blackwell's type. There's a school that needs a teacher, last I heard. I taught in Boston, Dahlia said, brightening, before my father sent for me. There you have it, then, he nodded approvingly. A new beginning. The sound of distant hoofbeats interrupted their conversation. Vaughn was on his feet instantly, hand on his revolver. Get to the trees, he ordered quietly. Take Willow. Dahlia gathered the horses' reins with trembling hands, leading them into the cover of a stand of cottonwoods. Vaughn crouched by the stream, watching the horizon where dust clouds signaled approaching riders. 4 men on horseback appeared, riding hard. Even from a distance, Dahlia recognized the leader, a man with a red bandana who'd stood watching as her father's house burned. Vaughn didn't move, his body still as stone as the riders drew closer. They slowed upon seeing him, hands hovering near their weapons. Afternoon, the leader called, his voice carrying across the distance. Seen a woman around these parts, young, auburn hair, might be heading to Willow Creek. Can't say that I have, Vaughn answered easily. Been riding alone since dawn. The man's eyes narrowed suspiciously. Mind if we water our horses? It's free country, Vaughn replied, though his hand remained near his gun. The men dismounted, leading their horses to the stream. One walked close to where Dahlia hid, so near she could see the tobacco stains on his beard. She pressed herself against a tree trunk, praying he wouldn't look too carefully into the shadows. You headed to Willow Creek, the leader asked Vaughn, passing through. Got business in Helena. The leader nodded, though his expression remained doubtful. Name's Carter. I work for Mr. Blackwell. We're looking for a thief woman stole some valuable papers before burning down her own homestead. Killed her father too, from what we can tell. Dahlia bit her lip to keep from crying out at the blatant lies. Vaughn's face betrayed nothing. Sounds like a dangerous woman. That she is, Carter agreed. So if you see her, best not approach. Just send word to Blackwell's men in the next town. I'll keep that in mind, Vaughn said. The men remounted and Carter tipped his hat. Safe travels, stranger. Vaughn watched them ride away, waiting until they were specks on the horizon before signaling to Dahlia. We need to move, he said as she emerged from hiding. They'll figure out I lied soon enough. Dahlia's hands shook as he helped her back onto Willow. They're saying I killed my own father and burned our home. It's a common tactic, Vaughn said grimly. Turn the victim into the criminal makes it easier to justify hunting you down. But why? What could they possibly think I have? You mentioned papers. Did your father keep documents, deeds perhaps? Dahlia gasped, her hand flying to the small pouch sewn into her petticoat. The land deed, and letters correspondence with the territorial governor about Blackwell's activities. My father had been gathering evidence for months. Vaughn's eyes widened. That's why they killed him, and why they want you so badly. He mounted Tempest with renewed urgency. Those papers could be enough to bring Blackwell down. We need to get them to Sheriff Holt immediately. They rode hard through the afternoon, taking a less direct route to avoid the main trails. Dahlia's body ached from the unaccustomed hours in the saddle, but she didn't complain. By nightfall, the lights of Willow Creek appeared in the distance, a small constellation of warmth in the vast darkness of the prairie. We'll approach from the east, Vaughn decided. Less likely to be seen that way. The town was quiet as they rode in, most establishments closed for the night. A few saloons spilled light and piano music onto the dirt street, but Vaughn guided them past these to a small building with a painted sign, Sheriff. A gray-haired man with a neatly trimmed beard looked up from his desk as they entered. His weathered face registered surprise, then recognition as he saw Vaughn. Daniels, thought you were still chasing ghosts up north. Found something more substantial, Holt. Vaughn gestured to Dahlia. This is Miss Dahlia Kincaid. Her father was killed by Blackwell's men 3 days ago. She has evidence of their land-grabbing scheme and they're hunting her for it. Sheriff Holt rose, offering Dahlia his chair. My condolences for your father, Miss Kincaid. Franklin Holt at your service. Dahlia sank gratefully into the chair, retrieving the papers from her hidden pouch. These are copies of our land deed and correspondence between my father and Governor Potts. He was building a case against Blackwell. The sheriff examined the documents, his expression growing graver with each page. This is damning evidence, all right, especially these forged railroad documents. He looked up at Vaughn. This could be what we need to finally get federal attention. Blackwell's men are close, Vaughn warned. They were asking after her today, claiming she killed her father and burned their homestead. Holt snorted. Typical. Well, they won't touch you in my town, Miss Kincaid. I've got a spare room at my house where you can stay tonight. My wife will be glad for the company. What about Vaughn? Dahlia asked, suddenly reluctant to be separated from her protector. I've got other business, Vaughn said quietly. You're going after them, aren't you? Dahlia stood, alarmed. Alone, not to fight, he assured her, but I need to find out who's working with Blackwell in this territory. Tonight's my best chance to observe them unaware. That's a fool's errand, Daniels, Holt warned. You've already brought me the evidence we need. It's not enough, Vaughn insisted. We need names, people in positions of power who are taking Blackwell's money. Otherwise, this just gets buried like every other attempt to bring him to justice. Dahlia stepped closer to him, lowering her voice. Please don't go, it's too dangerous. For a moment, something vulnerable flickered in Vaughn's eyes. I'll be careful, he promised, and I'll come back. She wanted to protest further, but the determination in his face told her it would be futile. Instead, she reached out and squeezed his hand. I'll hold you to that, Cowboy. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Get some rest, Dahlia, you're safe now. Sheriff Holt's home was a comfortable two-story house at the edge of town. His wife, Martha, a kind-faced woman with silver-streaked brown hair, welcomed Dahlia warmly. "You poor dear," she clucked, ushering Dahlia toward the bathroom where a hot bath awaited. Franklin sent word ahead. "Fresh clothes are by the tub, and there's stew keeping warm for when you're finished." The simple kindness nearly undid Dahlia. She thanked Martha with a voice thick with unshed tears, then sank into the first hot bath she'd had in days. As she scrubbed away the dirt and fear of her journey, her thoughts kept returning to Vaughn. In just 2 days, the quiet cowboy had become important to her in ways she couldn't articulate. Clean and dressed in borrowed clothes, Dahlia joined the Holts for a late supper. The stew was hearty and delicious, but anxiety about Vaughn's whereabouts dampened her appetite. "Your friend Daniels is a good man," Sheriff Holt said, noting her distraction. "One of the best trackers I've ever known, and smart too. He'll be all right." "How do you know him?" Dahlia asked. "He helped me track down a gang that robbed the Willow Creek bank last year. Former Texas Ranger, though he doesn't talk about it much. Lost his partner in a bad way ambush by Blackwell's men, been hunting them ever since." "He told me some of it," Dahlia said softly. "He blames himself, doesn't he?" Holt nodded. "Most good men would. Truth is, Blackwell's organization runs deeper than most folks realize. They've got judges, politicians, even lawmen on their payroll, makes them nearly untouchable." "Until now," Martha said firmly, refilling Dahlia's tea. "With your father's evidence and Franklin's testimony, perhaps the territorial governor will finally take action." "I hope so," Dahlia murmured. "My father deserves justice." Later, lying in the Holt's spare bedroom, Dahlia found sleep elusive. Every creak of the house, every distant sound from the town made her wonder if it was Vaughn returning or Blackwell's men coming for her. When dawn finally broke, she rose exhausted but determined. Martha helped her select a simple dress from her own younger days, and Dahlia pinned her hair neatly. If she was to start a new life in Willow Creek, she would need to look presentable. "The school board meets today at noon," Martha informed her over breakfast. "Franklin mentioned you were a teacher. If you're interested, I could introduce you." Dahlia hesitated only briefly. "Yes, I'd like that." "Thank you." The morning passed in a blur of introductions as Martha proudly showed Dahlia around town. Willow Creek was larger than it had appeared in the darkness, a proper frontier town with a general store, 2 churches, a small hotel, several saloons, and various businesses. People nodded politely, though Dahlia caught curious glances and whispered conversations in her wake. "Pay them no mind," Martha advised. "News travels fast in small towns. They know something's afoot with the sheriff harboring a stranger, but they're good people at heart." The school was a one-room building at the north end of town, currently empty for summer break. Inside, dust motes danced in sunbeams that streamed through high windows. Dahlia ran her fingers along the teacher's desk, feeling a flutter of possibility. "It's not much compared to Boston schools, I imagine," Martha said. "It's perfect," Dahlia replied honestly. Teaching had been her passion in Boston before duty to her father had called her west. The thought of returning to it gave her a sense of purpose she desperately needed. At noon, they met with the school board 3 stern-faced men and 2 practical-looking women who questioned Dahlia thoroughly about her qualifications and experience. "We've been without a proper teacher since Miss Winters married and moved to Denver this spring," explained Mrs. Adler, the board's chairwoman. "The children have suffered for it." "I would be honored to fill the position," Dahlia said earnestly. "I believe education is the foundation of a civilized society, even perhaps especially on the frontier." The board members exchanged approving glances. "There's a small cottage behind the school for the teachers' use," Mr. Peterson, the town banker, informed her. "It would need some fixing up, but it could be ready before the term starts in September." "That would be most welcome," Dahlia said, hope rising in her chest. A home of her own, a purpose, a community it was more than she dared dream when fleeing her burning homestead. The meeting concluded with a tentative offer contingent on references, which Martha assured them would be forthcoming from Boston. As they walked back toward the sheriff's office, Dahlia felt lighter than she had in days. The feeling evaporated when she saw the gathering outside the jail. A crowd had formed, voices raised in agitation. Sheriff Holt stood on the steps, hands raised for calm. "What's happening?" Dahlia asked, clutching Martha's arm. Before Martha could answer, the crowd parted, and Dahlia saw him, Vaughn, bloody and bruised, being half-carried by two men toward the doctor's office across the street. "Vaughn." She broke away from Martha, rushing to his side. His face was a map of cuts and bruises, his left eye swollen shut. Blood stained his shirt in several places. "Dahlia," he rasped, his good eye finding hers, "you're safe." "What happened to you?" she demanded, falling into step beside the men supporting him. "Found what I was looking for," he managed, wincing as they navigated the doctor's office steps. "And then some." Inside, Dr. Wilson, a balding man with spectacles and efficient hands, directed them to lay Vaughn on an examination table. "Everyone out except Miss Kincaid if she's staying to assist." The others retreated, and Dahlia moved to Vaughn's side, taking his hand. "Tell me what happened." "Followed Carter and his men to a meeting at the Painted Lady Saloon," Vaughn said as the doctor cut away his shirt. "Judge Hollister was there, and Mayor Green from Silver Gulch. They're all in Blackwell's pocket." "Hold still, doctor." Wilson instructed, examining a deep gash across Vaughn's ribs. "You'll need stitches." Vaughn grimaced but continued. "I got careless. One of them spotted me listening outside the window, followed me when I left." He squeezed Dahlia's hand as the doctor began cleaning his wounds. "Didn't get much of a chance to fight back. There were 4 of them." "You're lucky to be alive," the doctor commented, threading a needle. "I had something to come back for," Vaughn said, his eyes locked on Dahlia's. She felt heat rise to her cheeks but didn't look away. "You promised you'd be careful." "I was," he insisted. "Just not careful enough." The doctor worked methodically, stitching Vaughn's wounds and bandaging his ribs. 2 broken ribs, extensive bruising, and these cuts. "You'll live, Mr. Daniels, but you won't be riding anywhere for at least a week." "I can't stay that long," Vaughn protested. "They know I'm here now. They'll come looking." "Let them come," Sheriff Holt said from the doorway. "This is my town, and I've already deputized a dozen men." "Blackwell's thugs won't catch us unprepared." Dahlia looked from Holt to Vaughn. "What does this mean?" "It means we're making our stand here," Holt said grimly. "I've sent telegrams to the territorial governor and the federal marshal in Helena with copies of your father's evidence. But until help arrives, we need to be ready." "How long?" Vaughn asked, struggling to sit up. 3 days, maybe 4 for the marshal to get here with enough men," Holt replied. "Can you ride by then?" Vaughn nodded, though the movement clearly pained him. "I'll have to." "You'll stay with us until then," Martha declared, having followed her husband inside. "Both of you, it's safer that way." That evening, after helping Vaughn settle into the Holt's spare bedroom, Dahlia sat by his bedside. He'd been given laudanum for the pain, and his expression was softer than she'd yet seen it. "You should get some rest," he told her. "You look exhausted." "I'll rest when I know you're sleeping peacefully," she replied, adjusting his pillow. "Martha is making up a bed for me downstairs." Vaughn caught her hand as she moved to stand. "I'm sorry I brought this danger to your doorstep, Dahlia. You could have started fresh here without getting caught up in my vendetta." "This was never just your fight," she reminded him. "They killed my father. They tried to steal our land." "I want justice as much as you do." His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "You're not what I expected when I found you hiding behind that cottonwood." "What did you expect?" Someone frightened, broken. Instead, his voice grew softer, the laudanum loosening his usual reserve. "Instead, I found someone brave enough to point a gun at a stranger twice her size. Someone who survived loss and kept her dignity. Someone beautiful inside and out." Dahlia's breath caught. "The laudanum is making you poetic, Cowboy." A smile tugged at his lips. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just letting me say what I've been thinking since the moment I saw you." She should leave, she knew. He was injured, medicated, vulnerable, but something kept her anchored to his side, their hands still joined. "When this is over," she said carefully, "what will you do?" His eyes, hazy with medication but still intense, held hers. "I don't know anymore. For 2 years, all I've thought about is bringing Blackwell to justice. I never planned beyond that. Perhaps you could stay, she suggested, her heart beating faster. Willow Creek seems like a good place to start over. It does at that, he agreed, his eyelids growing heavy, especially with its newest schoolteacher. Dahlia smiled, gently withdrawing her hand as sleep began to claim him. Rest now, we'll talk more tomorrow. The next 3 days passed in a state of tense preparation. Sheriff Holt organized the town's defense, positioning lookouts and establishing safe houses for women and children. Dahlia divided her time between helping Martha with household tasks and tending to Vaughn, whose recovery progressed more quickly than the doctor had predicted. By the 3rd day, he was moving around the house with only occasional winces. The bruises on his face had faded to yellowish smudges, and the spark of determination had returned to his eyes. "I need to check on the horses," he announced after breakfast. "Tempest gets ornery when he's cooped up too long." "I'll come with you," Dahlia offered, grabbing her shawl. They walked slowly to the livery stable, Vaughn's hand occasionally brushing hers in a way that seemed both accidental and deliberate. The town was quieter than usual, many families having sent women and children to stay with relatives in safer locations. At the stable, Tempest nickered in greeting, pushing his nose against Vaughn's chest. "Easy, boy," Vaughn chuckled, patting the stallion's neck. "I'm still a bit tender." Willow was equally pleased to see them, accepting apple slices from Dahlia's palm with gentle lips. "She likes you," Vaughn observed, watching them. "The feeling is mutual," Dahlia replied, stroking the mare's soft muzzle. "She carried me to safety when I needed it most." Vaughn checked both horses thoroughly, satisfying himself that they were well cared for. As they prepared to leave, he paused, gazing out the stable door toward the distant hills. "They'll come from the east," he said quietly. "The sun will be in our eyes at dawn." Dahlia moved to stand beside him. "How many do you think?" "Depends how important Blackwell considers this threat." "Could be a dozen, could be more." He glanced down at her. "It's not too late for you to leave. Take Willow and ride south to Helena. You'd be safer there." She shook her head firmly. "I'm staying. These people have taken me in, offered me a future. I won't abandon them or you." Something shifted in Vaughn's expression, a softening around his eyes. Without warning, he reached for her, his hand cupping her cheek with unexpected tenderness. "Dahlia Kincaid," he murmured, "you are the most stubborn, bravest woman I've ever known." Before she could respond, shouts erupted from the town's eastern edge. Vaughn's hand dropped to his gun as they hurried outside. A rider was galloping toward town, his horse lathered with exertion. It was one of Holt's lookouts, Dahlia realized. "They're coming." The young man yelled as he reached the main street. "At least 20 riders, armed to the teeth. Half-hour behind me, maybe less." Sheriff Holt emerged from his office, shotgun in hand. "Sound the alarm, everyone to their positions." The town erupted into organized chaos as men rushed to defensive positions, and the few remaining women hurried to the church basement where they'd be safest. "Go with them," Vaughn urged Dahlia. "No," she replied, squaring her shoulders. "I can shoot. My father made sure of that." Vaughn looked like he wanted to argue but nodded instead. "Stay close to me. If things go badly, we make for the horses." They hurried to the sheriff's office where Holt was distributing ammunition to his deputies. "Daniels," he acknowledged grimly, "glad to see you on your feet." "Miss Kincaid, you should be at your side with a rifle," she interrupted. "I'm staying." Holt exchanged a look with Vaughn, who shrugged. "Don't bother arguing, I already tried." The sheriff sighed, handing her a Winchester. "Do you know how to use this?" "Yes, sir." She checked the action with practiced hands. "My father believed in being prepared." Holt nodded approvingly. "We've got men positioned in the hotel, the general store, and both churches. They'll be expecting us to concentrate our defense here at the jail, so that's where we'll be thinnest." "Let them think they've found a weak spot. And then?" Vaughn asked. "And then we spring the trap," Holt said with grim satisfaction. "I've got men hidden in the alley behind the jail. Once Blackwell's boys are committed to the attack, they'll find themselves caught in a crossfire." It was a good plan, Dahlia thought as they took up positions inside the jail. Simple but effective, assuming Blackwell's men attacked as expected. 20 minutes later, dust clouds appeared on the eastern horizon. Dahlia's mouth went dry as she counted the approaching riders, 22 by her count, all armed with rifles and revolvers. "That's Carter at the lead," Vaughn said from beside her at the window. "And the one in the black hat is Maxwell, Blackwell's second in command. He doesn't usually dirty his hands with small operations." "I guess we're not small anymore," Dahlia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Vaughn's hand found hers briefly, a reassuring squeeze. "Remember what I said, if things go wrong, we make for the horses," she finished. "But they won't go wrong." The riders slowed as they reached the edge of town, spreading out in a loose formation. Carter raised his hand and the group halted. "Sheriff Holt," he called, "we've come for the Kincaid woman and the ranger. Send them out and the rest of you can go about your business." Holt stepped onto the jailhouse porch, shotgun held casually in the crook of his arm. "This is my town, Carter. You and your men are not welcome here. Turn around and ride out while you still can." Carter laughed, the sound carrying clearly in the tense silence. "Don't be a fool, Holt. We've got you outnumbered. Don't make your people die for two strangers." "They're not strangers," Holt replied evenly. "They're under my protection. Last warning, ride out now." Maxwell spurred his horse forward. "Enough talk. Take the jail. Kill anyone who resists." The first shots rang out as Blackwell's men charged. Bullets splintered wood around the jailhouse windows as Dahlia, Vaughn, and Holt returned fire. From other buildings, the crack of rifles joined the cacophony as the town's defenders engaged. Two of the attackers fell immediately, but the others pressed forward, dismounting to take cover behind troughs and barrels. The air filled with gunsmoke and the acrid smell of burnt powder. "They're trying to circle around back," Vaughn warned, spotting movement to their right. "Good," Holt said grimly. "That's where Johnson and his men are waiting." Sure enough, shouts and gunfire erupted from behind the jail as the hidden defenders caught Blackwell's men by surprise. Several broke and ran back toward their horses, only to be picked off by marksmen in the hotel windows. The battle seemed to be turning in their favor when a stray bullet shattered the window beside Dahlia, showering her with glass. She cried out, falling backward, "Dahlia!" Vaughn was at her side instantly, his hands searching for wounds. "I'm all right," she assured him, brushing glass from her hair. Just startled. Before he could reply, the front door of the jail burst open. Maxwell stood in the doorway, pistol raised. Holt, positioned near the cells, turned too slowly. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him against the wall. Vaughn shoved Dahlia behind the desk and fired in one fluid motion. His bullet struck Maxwell in the chest, but not before the man got off another shot. Dahlia heard Vaughn grunt in pain as he fell beside her. "Vaughn!" she screamed, seeing blood bloom on his shirt near his already injured ribs. Maxwell staggered, falling to his knees. His gun hand rose again, aiming at Dahlia. Without thinking, she raised her Winchester and fired. The bullet took Maxwell between the eyes and he collapsed in a lifeless heap. The sudden silence was deafening. Dahlia dropped her rifle, turning to Vaughn, who lay pale and still beside her. "No, no, no," she murmured, pressing her hands to his wound. "Don't you dare die on me, Cowboy, not now." His eyelids fluttered. "Not planning on it," he whispered. "How's Holt?" "I'll live," the sheriff groaned from across the room, clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Question is, will you?" Outside, the shooting had ceased. Voices called the all clear as the town's defenders emerged from their positions. Footsteps pounded on the porch and Dr. Wilson rushed in, medical bag in hand. "Good God," he muttered, surveying the scene. "Martha said there might be casualties, but this—" "The sheriff first," Vaughn insisted weakly. "His wound is worse." "Like hell it is," Holt countered. "Take care of Daniels, Doc, I can wait." Dr. Wilson made his own assessment and knelt beside Vaughn. "Miss Kincaid, I need clean water and bandages. There's a pump out back." Dahlia nodded, reluctant to leave Vaughn's side, but knowing the doctor needed space to work. As she stepped over Maxwell's body and out the back door, she saw the aftermath of the battle, 4 of Blackwell's men dead in the alley, others being taken prisoner by Holt's deputies. Carter was among them, his face bloody but defiant as he was marched toward the jail. She filled a bucket at the pump, her hands shaking so badly that half the water sloshed over the sides. When she returned, Dr. Wilson had cut away Vaughn's shirt and was probing the wound. "Bullet went clean through," he announced. "Missed anything vital as far as I can tell, but he's lost blood. Going to need stitches and real rest this time." "I'll make sure of it," Dahlia promised, kneeling to hold Vaughn's hand, his fingers tightened around hers. "Did we win?" he asked hoarsely. "We did," she assured him, brushing hair from his forehead. "Carter's been captured. Most of the others are dead or in custody." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Good, that's good." As Dr. Wilson worked on Vaughn's wound, Martha arrived with more bandages and news. "Riders coming from the north," she reported. "Looks like the marshal and his men." Holt, his shoulder now bandaged, sighed with relief. "About time. Can you tell them we've got wounded in here, Martha, and prisoners that need securing?" She nodded, casting a concerned glance at Vaughn before hurrying out. The next few hours passed in a blur for Dahlia. The federal marshal, a stern-faced man named Garrett, took charge of the prisoners and debriefed Holt on the situation. Vaughn was moved to Dr. Wilson's house for proper care, with Dahlia insisting on accompanying him. By nightfall, a semblance of calm had returned to Willow Creek. Dahlia sat by Vaughn's bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest as he slept, the laudanum doctor. Wilson had administered, keeping him mercifully pain-free. A soft knock at the door preceded Martha's entrance with a tray of food. "You need to eat, dear," she said gently, setting the tray on a small table. "You've had quite a day." Dahlia nodded gratefully. "Thank you. How is the sheriff?" "Grumbling about being confined to bed," Martha said with a fond smile. "Which means he's on the mend." She glanced at Vaughn. "The marshal would like to speak with both of you when he's able." "What will happen to Carter and the others?" Dahlia asked. "They'll be taken to Helena for trial." "With your father's evidence and the testimony of folks here, they'll hang for sure." Martha hesitated. The marshal also brought news. "Blackwell himself was arrested yesterday in Denver. Seems your father's letters to the governor did more good than anyone realized." Tears sprang to Dahlia's eyes. "So it's over, truly over." "It appears so," Martha confirmed, patting her shoulder. "Your father can rest in peace knowing justice was done." After Martha left, Dahlia ate mechanically, her mind trying to process everything that had happened. The realization that it was truly over, that her father's killers would face justice, that Blackwell's reign of terror had ended, felt surreal. She must have dozed off in her chair because she woke to find Vaughn watching her, his eyes clear and alert despite his pallor. "You should be in a proper bed," he said softly. "I didn't want to leave you," she admitted, moving to sit on the edge of his bed. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been shot," he replied with a weak attempt at humor. "But I'll heal. I've had worse." Dahlia took his hand, tracing the calluses and scars that told the story of his hard life. "Martha says Blackwell's been arrested. It's over, Vaughn." He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. "What does that mean for you?" he finally asked. "I'm staying in Willow Creek," she said. "The school board confirmed my appointment this afternoon. I'll start teaching in September." "That's good," he said, though something like disappointment flickered across his face. "You'll make a fine teacher." Dahlia gathered her courage. "And what about you? Now that your hunt is over, what will you do?" Vaughn looked away, his jaw working. "I don't know. For so long, finding Blackwell was all that kept me going. Now," he trailed off, seeming lost. "You could stay," she suggested softly. "Willow Creek could use a man like you." "As what?" he asked. "A hired gun. That's all I've been for years." "As whatever you want to be," Dahlia insisted. "A rancher, perhaps." Sheriff Holt mentioned land for sale north of town, good grazing land with a creek running through it. Hope kindled in his eyes. "I do no cattle. My father ran a small ranch in Texas before he died." "There you have it then," she said, smiling. "A new beginning for both of us." Vaughn's hand turned in hers, their fingers intertwining. "Dahlia," he began hesitantly, "when I thought I might die today, there was only one regret in my mind." "What was that?" she asked, her heart beating faster. "That I might never get the chance to tell you how I feel, how you've brought light back into my life when I thought all was darkness." He pushed himself up slightly, wincing at the effort. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a week, but sometimes when you've lived the life I have, you learn to recognize the real thing when you find it." Dahlia felt tears welling in her eyes. "And what is the real thing, Vaughn Daniels?" "Love," he said simply. "I love you, Dahlia Kincaid. I loved you when you pointed that little pistol at me by the cottonwood. I loved you when you refused to break under the weight of all you'd lost. And I'll love you for as long as you'll let me." Dahlia leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. "When they told me life out west would break me, I believed them. I was so afraid of not being strong enough." She drew back slightly to meet his gaze. "But you showed me that bending isn't the same as breaking, that there's strength in vulnerability." "They said you'd break me," she whispered, echoing the words that had passed between them at their first meeting. "I'll only bend closer to love you," he completed, his hand rising to cup her cheek. This time, when his lips met hers, there was no hesitation, no interruption, only the sweet certainty of coming home after a long journey. 6 months later, as winter blanketed Willow Creek in pristine white, Dahlia stood at the window of the small but comfortable ranch house that she now shared with Vaughn. In the distance, she could see him checking on the small herd of cattle they'd purchased with the money from the sale of her father's land. The D-Bar-D ranch was modest, but it was theirs, a dream neither had dared hope for during those dark days on the run. The schoolhouse in town bore her touch now, curtains at the windows, fresh paint, new books ordered from St. Louis. Her students, 23 in all, ranging from 6 to 16 years old, had become dear to her. 3 days a week she taught them reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. The other days she helped Vaughn with the ranch. Sheriff Holt had recovered fully from his wound and had deputized Vaughn for special occasions when extra help was needed. The town had embraced them, both the schoolteacher and the former ranger who had helped bring down Blackwell's empire. The trials in Helena had concluded 2 months prior. Carter and his surviving men had been sentenced to hang. Blackwell himself had received life imprisonment. Justice, as Martha had predicted, had been served. Dahlia smiled as she watched Vaughn riding back toward the house, his breath visible in the cold air. Their wedding 3 months ago had been a joyous affair, with seemingly the entire town in attendance. Martha had helped her sew a new dress, and Holt had given her away in her father's stead. The door opened, bringing a gust of cold air and her husband, his cheeks ruddy from the chill. "All's well with the herd," he reported, removing his hat and coat, "though Jenkins says there's another storm coming in from the north." "Then I'm glad I have you to keep me warm," Dahlia replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. Vaughn's arms encircled her waist, drawing her close. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Daniels?" "Only twice," she teased. "You're falling behind schedule." He laughed, the sound still a novelty that delighted her. When they'd met, laughter had been foreign to him, beaten down by years of grief and vengeance. Now it came more easily with each passing day. "I love you, Dahlia Daniels," he said, his voice soft but certain. "More than I have words to express." "And I love you," she replied, resting her head against his chest where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. "My bending, never-breaking cowboy." Outside, snow began to fall again, gentle flakes that drifted past the window like dancing stars. But inside, there was only warmth and love, and the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine, a future built on the foundation of a whispered promise beneath a cottonwood tree. "They said you'd break me. I'll only bend closer to love you." Words that had become their truth, their story, their everlasting vow.